It's me again. So I was looking on YouTube to try to figure out how to do an airbrush moon. And it looks like a lot of the guys that I found easily were using stencils. And stencils are fine if you're trying to get a whole lot of license plates or something out fast. Time is money, that kind of thing. That I'm really just kind of exploring, and I wanted to learn how to up my freehand skills, because if you can freehand it, you can do anything in airbrush. So last time we were going over how to use spidering, which is normally considered a mistake, to make kind of an insane asylum lunatic moon with all of these things coming off of it that looked kind of eldritch and strange. This time I'm actually trying to get a more of a realistic normal moon. And it occurred to me that for those of you who are brand new to airbrushing, who maybe you just took it out of the package, you've just started working with it, you're not sure what you're doing, this will actually show you how to do a lot of stuff in airbrushing. Because as simple as it is, actually most of airbrushing is this simple. The thing to keep in mind is that if you're using what I use, which is these folk art paints, and I thin them down with water, a lot of times what happens is they get sort of transparent. They get to be like watercolors, and what happens is that aids in your color blending. It helps your colors blend really well, but the problem there is that sometimes you might not get the color saturation you're looking for. So a little warning, whenever you're pre-doing your backgrounds like I tend to do, I actually started to do that because I'm not as patient as I should be, and I wanted to be able to get a good layer of color immediately, because for me it's all about, ooh, look at the pretty colors, it's so shiny. You know, I'm just girly girl like that. Sometimes you may be tempted to use a darker color like that. Be aware whenever you do, you're going to have to use mostly light colors to actually show up on the dark color. There's a guy on YouTube that did this awesome video of himself spraying a horseman on a black background like that with only white paint, and that's what I actually was going to start trying to do there. I may actually wind up having to get some real airbrush paint for that, but we'll see. For this, I just used my lightest color and basically did a base coat over the whole thing. This is the laminated side of a poster board. If you don't put some paint on it, it's going to not stick as well whenever you're using this very watered down paint that I'm using. You're going to get all these blobs and splotches and splats, and it's just not going to do what you're aiming for, which is this, well, I have to do another layer anyway, which is this nice light layer of multiple, and you see what happens when cats try to help. Kibbit! But this nice multi-shaded effect that you've got going on. Eventually, I'm going to redo that, and that's what this moon is going toward. I apparently have some perfectionist tendencies, and going from spray paint to airbrush, it's a whole different world, so I'm still struggling a little bit. But I figured I'd help you guys along. So essentially, what I did for this was a two-part process, or I did in two bombing runs. The first thing that I did was I base coated with this brilliant yellow you see underneath. I used this stencil, and I just used a brush and laid down the yellow. And as you can see, there's a big old blob around it where it actually, it came out under the stencil and whatnot. For me, that's not that big of an issue right now, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my moon complete. Then I'm going to put my butter bowl lid on top of it after it's dried, of course. And then I'm going to spray around it. I'm going to spray a halo like I did over there after I spray the entire sky. It's going to be red and orange and black, and maybe even a little bit of purple or pink in there to make it kind of a horror movie type of scene. So it's not really that big of a deal for me for the edges to be like that. Now, if you're not going to spray a lot of stuff around it, if this is, say, one of the last things you're spraying, you're obviously going to have to be a little more careful about it. Another thing to keep in mind, and I actually did this one on purpose for the purposes of instruction, this came from holding my airbrush too close to the surface. This one came from Kibbit, and this one came from What Ago when I thought it was dry and just ran right over it. The thing with using the watered down craft paint, it does take a little while to dry. And if you keep on going and going and going, you have to let it dry at least a little bit between coats, because otherwise you can get drips and splatters and whatnot. And if you hold your airbrush too close, and I held it about yay far on a high enough air pressure, what happens is the air goes under that layer of paint and pushes it off of that area. So whenever you're doing these fine lines, a lot of times whenever people do the fine lines, they do have to get real close. That's why they always say to pull your air pressure down, so that you can get those fine lines, you can get in close to do that detail work without pushing your paint out of the way. And this will even happen with this folk art paint, even if it's been dried and you're just laying another layer on top of it sometimes still, if the air pressure is too high. For those of you who have a PSI regulator on there, which you should, you really need one, that means about 10 to 15 is about the highest you're going to want for hairline lines. Some people even go as low as 5. So it just kind of depends on what you can get to work with your viscosity of paint and with your particular medium. Now, if you're doing something like a urethane based on wood board and it's already been dried and you're just adding a fine line in on top of it, you may not have to go that low. The urethane tends to cling better. It tends to stick a little more. Until I get really good, though, I'm going to use my craft paint so I can do it cheaply and do a lot of it. So you have options. One option is to do what I did over here, base coat it with brilliant yellow or whatever one of your lighter colors is going to be, so you can immediately see the color build up. The other is just to go straight to the surface, which this is just a piece of scrap paper I had laying around. So what I do is I do 2 bombing runs. For this moon, I took some sunflower folk art that was already thinned down. What I do is I get these little jars, I get some cups or some bowls like this. You can get 6 of them for like $2 at Hobby Lobby. And I go ahead while I'm watching TV, I may be watching Andy Griffith or Hostel or something, and just go ahead and pre-thin all my paints and pour them into these jars so that you don't have to actually sit there whenever you're trying to get in the middle of a project and your passion is up and you're trying to get it going, and then here you have to stop and pre-mix some more paint. So I took my folk art sunflower, and from about 6 inches away, I just did 2 full passes to get a base layer on there, complete base layer. Then I took my vintage orange, which is a little bit darker, but if I can get a part that's not completely sprayed on and fingerprinted, it's a little bit darker, but it's not that much darker. It's a very similar color. So then I started to lay in some patches of vintage orange. And at first you won't notice anything happening. At first it looks like, well, is anything coming out? Oh my God, what's going on? So you have to be kind of patient and just build your layers. And I went in patches and I took my airbrush and I did a on, off, on, off, on, off, on, spray here, off, on, spray here, off. And the reason I did that, for those of you who are just beginning, if you've done some exercises with lines, you'll notice, and it's almost like using a tattoo needle as well. If you go ahead and turn it on, and then you put down a dot and you start doing your line, and then you leave it on and then you pull it up, a lot of times you'll have a blob at the beginning of your line and a blob at the end of your line. It'll look like a barbell. Kind of like whenever you're using a tattoo needle, you want to go ahead and start your machine going before you lay it down. And then whenever it's going, before you lay it down, you just do one smooth hand motion. You don't want to stop, you don't want to stutter, you don't want to pause anywhere, or else you are going to get those blobs. So that's where that on, off, on, off, on, off thing came from. So then I did the vintage orange in patches. Then I took some pumpkin orange, which you see there. I laid the pumpkin orange down in the patches between the others. Where the yellow was showing through more, that's where I put in the pure orange. And then I went back over the whole thing and I did some more vintage orange on those patches. I'm going to have to touch it up now because I messed it up. Oh my God, that happens too. Just be patient. Give yourself permission to mess it up. But lay down the vintage orange again, overlapping the pure orange a little bit to get a nice graded thing going on. Then did, from about 8 inches away this time, a whole layer of my lightest color, which was the sunflower. And that will actually kind of blend your colors together and tie them in. But since I've been messing it up, I'm just going to do the whole process all over again. And then I'm going to take that pure orange, I'm going to make a few craters, and all you do to make a crater, you just do a dot. That's it. You do a dot, then you take a light color and highlight around the outside of the dot, and then if you really want to get persnickety, you can do that fine line going in close and do a little bit of a soft graded thing down from the highlight. So the highlight can be the rim of the crater, the inside of the crater is that darker area, like a little pimple or something on the moon there. And then I'm going to probably on top of that do a little bit more patchwork just to even it out a little bit. And really, that's all it takes. It's quite simple. You can do it freehand without much problem. So if you want the lunatic moon, spider, spider, spider. If you want more of a soft, realistic moon, do this method, and then don't keep touching it later like I do, and don't let your cats walk on it, and they will try to help. Kibbit was using his tail the other day to help me paint, and Stripe did her own little painting. Apparently they were mimicking. And really, that's it. Just remember to be patient. Remember to layer, layer, layer until you get what you're looking for. Those of you who are coming to this from Bob Ross wet on wet oil technique or from regular acrylic painting, it does take considerably longer to get the look that you're looking for here. So just be aware of it. Give yourself plenty of time. Let yourself play a little bit. All right, guys, that's it, and happy crafting.